The Delphi case. I assume you may be pretty familiar with it if you clicked on this video, but just in case, I'll give a quick summary of what that is. And then we're going to get into the man they have now in custody who is charged with these two murders of these two little girls. Assuming that once this goes to trial, that he is found guilty. We're just kind of visiting the possibility of that. If you're curious, what would a prison bid look like for Richard Allen, the man charged? What would he experience? How will the other inmates feel about him? How will the guards feel about him? What is life going to be extra hard or no different than anyone else? As someone who recently has finished a 10-year prison sentence, I think I can give you a pretty accurate estimate of what it's going to be like for him in there. So that's the main point of this video. But real quick, let me kind of give you a recap of what has happened so far and even the newest update in this, which is utterly strange to say the least. This update came out maybe 2 days ago, and it's pretty wild. It's a pretty wild turn. So what is the Delphi case? In Delphi, Indiana, two young girls, Abigail Williams and Libby German, were found murdered out in the woods. And this is a case that is not new. This is several years old, and for several years, there was no one charged. There was no one arrested for these crimes. But, and if you don't know, this is not the most recent update, they have arrested and charged someone named Richard Allen with these two murders now. And he's awaiting trial. And apparently, while he's been in custody, he's confessed to these murders, to doing that multiple times, not just once. And of course, his defense team is pretty much saying, that doesn't matter. That doesn't count. He only did that because of his deteriorating mental health from being incarcerated. Well, let me tell you something, buddy. Like I said, I've done 10 years, way more than he's done. Did my mental health take a hit? Yeah. Yeah, it did. Did I have some things that, I had to work on because, it did kind of just mess me up in a few ways? Yeah, I did. Did my mental health ever deteriorate to the point where I would confess to some sickening crimes that I know deep in my heart that I did not do, not just once, but confess to them multiple times in several different situations? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, me personally, I don't buy it. You can have your own opinion about it, but there's that. Now, the newest update, this is just coming out over the weekend. There is a 136-page document that's kind of surfaced about what they found at the crime scene. Okay, and apparently they found a bunch of signs of like some sacrificial ritual from some religion. It's this Norse pagan style religion called Odinism, and they believe in this god called Odin. I've looked into it a little bit. And this apparently was the religion of the Vikings. And hey, look at this guy. He looks like he wishes, he's trying to have a little bit of Viking swag. Am I right? Yeah, he wishes. But listen, they found these runes associated with the religion kind of on the bodies of these two girls, made with sticks and twigs. And they also found this faux deer antler type thing that was fashioned from tree branches, and it was placed, by the head of Abigail Williams. And then also the blood of Abigail Williams was used to make another rune, another symbol, sigil, whatever you want to call it, related to Odinism on a nearby tree. And I looked into what do these mean, and basically the short version is one of them means hail, as in like all hail so-and-so. And then the other one that was on the tree means Odin, the god that they believe in. So basically you have hail Odin. So I just assume, this is supposed to be some type of ritual or sacrifice for this god. And it's ridiculous. And it is so strange and just so sickening. Okay. But that's the story thus far. All right. Now, since we got that recap out of the way, let's get to the main point of this video. Assuming when he goes to trial, he's found guilty and he is sentenced to prison. He goes to prison. What's going to happen then? Well, let me tell you. So when I make these types of videos, I do them a lot about pretty much any current case out there, I always got to start with, well, what are they in there for? Is this a crime that is going to kind of breed this anger and this hate from the other inmates towards the person, in this case, Richard Allen? A lot of times we're talking about people who have crimes more related to pedophilia and child molestation, things like that. In this case, he's kind of got this perfect storm of what his charge is. It's enough to, so yes, it is enough to anger the inmates, and a lot of people are like, well, who are they to judge? I mean, well, they're people who sell drugs and, probably did their things to grown adults, which they feel is okay, even though it's not. And they pass judgment on people who do it to kids. I mean, that's just a thing. That's just how it is in prison, Um, so yes, they're going to have a big problem with what he did, but a lot of times these guys, they're going in there for these kind of sexual related crimes against minors or children. And in a lot of prisons, I mean, it's the prison's job. I know everyone likes to think, oh, the guards don't like what they did either. And they don't. We're all human beings. Of course they don't like what they did. But their job description is to keep the inmates from basically killing each other. You can't put, so most prisons will not put those guys, just launch them into general population, to the wolves, basically. They understand what's going to happen to these guys, and usually, yeah, there's some exceptions there, but usually all those kind of guys who have those kind of charges are grouped together in one specific prison or one specific part of a prison. And so everyone's there for the same thing in this kind of big cell block. So, nobody's going to have a problem with anybody else for what they're in there for. They're all in there for something like that. See, so it kind of cuts down on anyone getting killed on the guard's watch, which they can be held liable for these days, believe it or not. Okay, that can be a legal issue. You put this person in the general population knowing that dude's going to have harm coming his way, probably. I mean, we all know how this stuff goes. It's common knowledge. And yeah, that's just the way it is these days. So it is hard to say, like, everyone likes to say, oh, people who do that stuff get messed up in prison. Yeah, they do. And they would. But everyone knows that now. And so they're kind of taking measures to just separate them from the guys who would want to do something to them, right? But that's when you have like sexual related crimes. And thank God that I don't, from everything I've seen, I don't see anything in these Delphi cases, these Delphi murders, that have any type of sexual assault in them. Okay. And again, thank God, that wasn't something that had to be experienced by them. But still, anytime your crime kind of brings harm to young children, whether it involves that or it doesn't, that's a big problem with the other inmates. And is his crime, the kind of perfect storm here is, I don't think his crime is enough to warrant being placed with the sex offenders, the child molesters, the pedophiles. And so it kind of, and yes, will he be on protect? I know everyone, hey, he's gonna be on protective custody. Of course he is. He's all over the news. Everyone who's all over the news goes to protective custody. Do they stay there? No, they don't. And there's no need to argue that. We can look at Larry Nassar. He was all over the news. He was in protective custody. Then he wasn't, because you can't hold someone there forever. And then when he wasn't anymore, he got stabbed. This was this year. Brutally stabbed. Ian Watkins. He was a musician, very famous. If you know what he did, then you know. Yeah, and he was kept in protective custody. But guess what? Not only was he attacked, he was held hostage. So this stuff happens. Okay, so yes, it's a given. If this guy goes to prison, will he be on PC for maybe a year? Maybe 2? Sure. Okay, sit tight. Sit tight. It'll happen. So, yeah, with setting that aside, when he does make it into general population, okay, whether he wants to or not, when he does make it into the general population, they're going to have a big problem with him. And his crimes don't really warrant him being permanently protected. Even when you get out of PC, you're going to be in kind of a sub PC area where it's just with everyone who's just like you. because what he did doesn't fit in that category, but it's still enough to make him a target. So now you see it's kind of like this perfect storm, to where you're going to be able to get got and people are going to want to get you. All right. And so also let's go back to the white nationalist thing, these white nationalist ties into this Odinism religion. So some people may say, well, he'll be all right. He's tied into the white nationalist thing. And I've done plenty of research myself and looked into it and spoken to people who have been there. There is a humongous white Caucasian race-based prison gang system out there in Indiana. And it's not just one. There are many subgroups, but there is one of the largest ones out there is one chapter of the Aryan Brotherhood out there in Indiana. So there is a huge presence of white gangs. Okay. So people may say, yeah, well, he'll be all right. He'll just link up with the whites and they'll protect him. No, they won't. These gangs have zero tolerance policies when it comes to harm against children. And just to tell you the truth, we're not going to be all politically correct here. Just to tell you the truth, especially because it's little girls and you're talking about a bunch of men, and you did that to not just children, but little girls. And that just sparks something just a little bit extra in these guys. Okay. They're not going to associate with that. You're not coming in our gang with what you did. And even more so, it's kind of like this white man, Richard Allen, enters the cell block. Everyone knows what he did because they see him on the news. These inmates love to watch the news. They don't miss a single segment of it. Trust me. They like to know. That's their way of knowing what's going on in the world, and that's valuable to them. So they keep up with stuff like this, especially when it's the inmates of Indiana watching this big of a thing happen in the state of Indiana. Okay. So they're going to know all about this guy and everything going on with him from the second he walks in the cell block. It's honestly kind of almost the responsibility of these white prison gangs because he's a white guy. And it's like, so all the other gangs are kind of looking at them like, hey, that's you. That's that's your guy. What you going to do? That's on you. That's your responsibility. Better get him. You better get him. And they'll if they don't, of course they will. But if they didn't, hypothetically, that would be a pretty bad look on them from the other game. Like, you're not handling your business. You guys aren't, keeping up with the rest of the standards of all these other gangs, So they're definitely going to do it. So I predict, usually I'm like, I don't know. He'll probably never see general population. It'll be very, very surprising if he does. It'll be a miracle. But if he does, then he'll get messed up, blah, 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 blah. But there are all these things that are going to keep him from probably seeing general population. This guy, I feel pretty confident in saying that for the reasons I just mentioned, he will find himself in general population and not in some like sub-protective custody wing of a prison. And I think he's ripe. He is ripe for the shanking, for lack of a better term. So there's my opinion. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it gave you some insight and information. And stay tuned. We'll just have to see how it goes. We still have the trial coming up. I'm sure I'll be covering it every step of the way. And if found guilty and sent to prison, we'll see just how right I was.